एष देवो विश्वकर्मा महात्मा सदा जनानां हृदये सन्निविष्टः। नमो नमस्ते गुरवे महात्मने विमुक्तसंगाय सदुत्तमाय नित्याद्वयानन्दरसस्वरूपिणे भूम्ने सदा पारदयाम्बुधाम्ने नमस्ते नमस्ते विभो विश्वमूर्ते नमस्ते नमस्ते चिदानन्दमूर्ते नमस्ते नमस्ते तपोयोगगम्य नमस्ते नमस्ते श्रुतिज्ञानगम्य स्वाराज्यसाम्राज्यविभूतिरेषा भवत्कृपा श्रीमहिमप्रसादात् प्राप्ता मया श्रीगुरवे महात्मने नमो नमस्तेस्तु पुनर्नमोस्तु नमो नमस्तेस्तु पुनर्नमोस्तु नमो नमस्तेस्तु पुनर्नमोस्तु नमस्तस्मै सदैकस्मै कस्मै चिन्महसे नमः यदेतद्विश्वरूपेण राजते गुरुराजते यदेतद्विश्वरूपेण राजते गुरुराजते। Hari. See, this Upanishads, all the Upanishads, they are part of the Vedas. Vedas have got two major portions. One is the ritualistic part, the Karma Kanda, or we call it Purva Mimamsa also. The other is the Jnana Kanda, that is the knowledge part of it, not the rituals, which are the Upanishads. This is also called Vedanta. Vedanta, Upanishads, they are same. All the assembly of Upanishads are called Vedanta. And they are called Jnana Kanda also because that's the knowledge part of the Vedas. Now about Vedas, generally we say that Vedas are Apaurushaya. Apaurushaya. That means they have not been composed by any particular human being or many human beings. Purusha, generally Purusha has two meanings. Generally Purusha we refer to our identity, I, consciousness I. That corresponding in Sanskrit Vyutpatti or etymology is Puri Sheteti Purusha. That means who is residing in our body. That is, it is limited by our body, our consciousness that we usually what we feel is called Puri Sheteti Purusha. The same Purusha is used for the ultimate supreme Purusha also, the universal one or transcendental identity. That is also called Purusha. There the etymology becomes Purnam Anena Sarvam Iti Purusha. Purnam Anena Sarvam Iti Purusha. By which everything is full. That is, it cannot be missed anywhere at all. The whole existence is appearing in that Purusha, in that consciousness. So there is no question of missing him anywhere at all. Now, when we say Apaurushaya, we are referring to the Purusha as the small Purusha. That means it has not been composed by any human being. Does it mean that it has been dropped from the sky? That is ridiculous. That is not possible. We have certain such ideas also that it has come like that. It is not so. Apurusha, it is written in human language. They are all Sanskrit languages. I mean, they are Sanskrit language it's written in. Apurusha means that it is not composed by anybody from his limited mind, intelligence, etc. Just as we compose poem, it is not like that. They are called revelations. Revelations means when the mind attains its transcendental position, leaving all its limitation, body, mind, association, it is a transcendental mind, then whatever truth is revealed to that mind, they have just expressed it. That is why it is called, it is not composition, it is a revelation. All the Vedic mantras are supposed to be revelation. That in that transcendental state of the mind, the mantras come out. So mantras are not composed by the person, although we say Rishi of that mantra. Say Gayatri, we say Vishwamitra is the Rishi of that mantra. There is a difference, it is not like a poet of that mantra. Rishi means seer. That means this mantra was revealed to that seer, that Rishi. That is why they are called Rishi. They are seers of the truth, seers of the mantra. Like that, many of the mantras we have the corresponding Rishis, that who it was revealed to whom, like that. So, these Upanishads also, there is another very important understanding needed for the Upanishads. This is actually the way I generally present. It is not really, I have not found anywhere written like this, because whatever interpretations they have been continuing in the traditional manner. But because I have the scientific background and my analysis, my search had been both complementary with the science and the spirituality. When I understood, when I absorbed that the truth of all these things, I understood that the Upanishads are the experimental record of our discoveries in the subjective field. Try to understand that. They are experimental records. Why? In science also we have experimental science and theoretical science. Suppose some experiments have been done and they have written the experimental records. Now to explain them we form a theory or a model. That is, say, Newton's gravitational model or Einstein's relativity. All those are models. Whatever we have in science, they are all models to explain what is happening in the world. We have lot of misconception regarding that. We think that the science replies the why of it. That by science we understand why this world is there, why things are falling, why things are not going here and there but falling down. It is not why at all. Science only tries to integrate all the happenings around, all the phenomena, whatever is happening around, by its unified vision of a model. And when we find that the things are happening in a different manner, suppose initially there were Newton's laws. According to that, we were explaining things. Now Newton's laws were a model which could explain that why if we leave something it falls down, if we throw a stone it goes in a certain trajectory, if the moon is going around the earth with a certain speed, certain trajectory, all these things together could be explained by the laws. So whatever is happening in the universe, seeing that, we are giving a model. Now the moment there are some other experimental results, like in the subatomic level or atomic level or in the high speed velocity level, we found that those laws are no more valid there. Newton's laws do not operate there. That means the model we had given becomes invalid. So we went for Einstein's laws, further relativistic quantum electrodynamics, various stage after stage. As our experiments increased, we changed our laws, and the newer laws should be able to explain the newer experiments as well as the old, whatever data was that were there, that also should be explicable by putting some limiting condition. That is, when you high velocity laws, if you put the velocity low, then they become these simplified laws which were there earlier. So basically in science always we are having the experimental results, and to explain them we are putting the theories. Similarly, the rishis, the scientists of our country, they found that the ultimate explanation cannot lie in the world. They tried, initially they tried, they found that it does not lie in the world, because finally it is our perception which we are trying to explain. So let us first understand how is our perception. Who am I who is looking at the world? Let us first understand the subject, and then only we will be able to solve the mystery of the world. So that was a great revolutionary step when they started looking within, changing their focus from the external universe to within. And that led to the greatest discovery of the world. Mind you, it is the greatest discovery of the world, much greater than the scientific discoveries of physics, chemistry, mathematics. Because this discovery has solved the problem of human beings forever. And this has kept our civilization living for unknown period of time. How many thousands of years this Indian civilization is there, we don't know. It is not only a solution for the individual fulfillment, all-round fulfillment of the individual, but a fulfillment for the society also. It clearly defines how a society can be sustained. It's all based on this discovery. The other scientific discoveries, within 300 years, they have started destroying the world we have created, God has created. We have started destroying it. We have started polluting everything everywhere by the scientific discoveries, because there was no balance to utilize them properly. But this discovery has always sustained nature, sustained the human civilization, and always led the human civilization on the auspicious track. Not only that, it fulfills our emotional need, it fulfills our intelligential needs, it fulfills our societal sustenance needs also. So that is why I call it the greatest discovery, and it will never be changed, nothing to change at all. Thousands of years have passed. In each era, there had been many people who had experimented with it and discovered the truth. Why? Because it is not a discovery of the material anything. Suppose who has discovered the camera, we are utilizing the camera, we don't have to know what is there in the camera. But this is the truth about our own self, about our own identity. So unless we discover it ourselves, the knowledge will not have its full effect. That is, who I am, it has to be known by me. So much of glory of the Atma is spoken of, but Atma is not a second entity about which we have learned that Atma na jayate na amriyate va kadachit, etc. We have to understand that I am transcending the Janma and Mrityu. Without that, it will not have its effect. So this discovery has to be a first-hand discovery. First-hand discovery means everybody will have to discover, otherwise it will be a knowledge you can utilize to some extent, but it will not have its full potential until I know who I am. That knowledge has to be fully absorbed and fully actualized by us. Then only it will have its full effect. So this is the speciality of the discovery, that because it is about the subject, had it been about the object, then this necessity would not have been there. It is about our own self, so we have to discover it first hand to have its full glory. Now, I said that the Upanishads are experimental, as in science we have experimental record and the theoretical. Like that, the Upanishads are straight away, they are the results of the experiments recorded by the rishis. Whereas Brahma Sutra and other Prakarana Granthas, etc., they are the theoretical foundation. That is, although it is experimentally revealed, we can build up a very good theoretical model which will lead us to this truth. But because this truth is not anything different from me, it has to be experimentally also realized by one to have its full effect. But to establish the truth, we can approach through reason. The reason itself will take us transcendental reason, and the full truth can be, the theory can be formed, which will give us that is what we have been doing in Bhagavad Gita and all. So many times I had been trying to explain what is this soul, what is this universal soul, how to approach it, and what it is finally. These are all trying to express what is this. And I also said that it is non-dual truth, so finally it is beyond all expression. But that it is beyond all expression will also be given by the reason itself. The reason itself will take us beyond the reason. The reason itself will show us the limitation of the reason, and all the reasons are within the duality, cause and effect. It can never lead us to the ultimate truth. So that itself will tell that to reach the ultimate truth, we have to transcend the causality, the cause and effect relationship. So there is a sound theoretical basis for the experimental discovery also. But the Upanishads do not bother about the theory part of it at all. They simply go on saying whatever is the truth they have found. Absolutely plain speaking about the truth. That is the speciality of the Upanishads. So they need a very profound understanding, profound communication also. So in a state of a disturbed mindset, it is very difficult to communicate. So they have restricted. Earlier it was given only to people who are adhikaris. Adhikari means who have the fitness to receive. Now it is spoken of, we are speaking about it everywhere, all over the world. At least whatever the truth can be propagated, that will have its good effect in the society. But earlier it was not like that. It was given in a very secluded, peaceful circumstance by a proper guru to a proper shishya. That was the idea. So that the whole knowledge remains unperverted, untarnished, and pristine knowledge is transferred from generation to generation. This is true of music also. Now music, where classical music is going all over the world, it has made our classical music famous. But at the same time, the purity of the music is not preserved in many of the cases. Earlier we had that guru-shishya relationship so strong that one gharana and another gharana will not get mixed up, to preserve the purity of it. So the Upanishads are absolutely pure description or narration of the truth, or if better word will be revelation of the truth. It is not a narration, it's a revelation of the truth. For example, in Shvetashvatara Upanishad, it starts with the students of Brahma Vidya, the students of this Brahman knowledge. They are discussing amongst themselves. It starts like this, the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. They are discussing what can be the cause behind this, all that life and the universe and all. They are discussing, can time be the cause? Can the causality we are seeing, that is the ultimate truth? Can there be the fate or the chance is the ultimate truth? What is the ultimate truth in it? They are discussing and negating each, that all these things, whatever we may say, space, time, causality, they are all seen by me. So they are all depending on me. So they cannot be final. The independent position is of me, the I who is seeing the world, who is seeing the external world, who is seeing the internal world, everything. But then they are saying that, but that I also, it is undergoing changes. Sukha dukkha hetuhu. I am feeling that now I am dukkhi. I am feeling that I am very happy. So that means that I is the I we know of, the usual I we know of, that is always undergoing change. So it is not the unchanging permanent truth. It is always, it is depending on the sukha, dukkha and whatever is happening to us, it is undergoing change. So that is also not possible then. Then what do we have? The whole world, its time, space, causality, providence, everything has been eliminated. And I, the seer, that also cannot be, we cannot hold on to it, it is changeful. Then what is unchanging? They could not get anything. So then the next shloka says, Te dhyana yoganugata pashyan devatma shaktim swagunair nigudham yah karanani nikhilani tani kalatmayuktanyadhitishthatatyekaha. So not finding the answer to where lies the absolute truth, the ultimate truth, they took to dhyana yoga anugata, dhyana yoga. They started meditating within to find out who am I. They started meditating, dhyana, yoga. Yoga means that I am getting separated. So how can I get back to myself? So dhyana yoga, or you can say the practice of dhyana as a yoga also is okay. Anugata apashyan. This apashyan I wanted to point out. Apashyan means they saw. It is a statement of an experiment performed. They are not saying this should be like this, that should be like this. It is not that. It is not a theory. It's an experimental record that after analysis they could not find, and they entered into the dhyana yoga, and then in the dhyana they finally discovered. Apashyan means saw means discovered. What did they discover? Devatma Shaktim Swagunair Nigudham. See that words, each word is so powerful. It is because it's a revelation. As I am saying, they are all revealed words, they are not composed. Devatma Shaktim. Three things are there. Deva, Atma, Shaktim. This Deva has come from Div Dhatu. Div means that which has its original brilliance. Say, we consider normally the sun has the original brilliance, so sun is a Deva. Like that, whatever original powers, they are called Devas. But ultimately, the ultimate Deva of all is the final revealer. Even sun is not the revealer. To see the sun, we have to first of all have eyes, and with the eyes also we will not be able to see unless we have the consciousness. The sun is finally revealed in our mind with the consciousness, by the consciousness. So the ultimate revealer is the consciousness, the I in us. So they discovered by the dhyana yoga something which is all these three together. Deva means which is the revealer of everything, the revealer of our thoughts, the revealer of our emotion, the revealer of the external world. They discovered that. And who is that? Atma. Deva Atma Shaktim. That revealer is now nobody else than the I in us, which I am throughout the day, throughout my life I am using I. Without that a dream also cannot be there. Always that I is there. They discovered that I is not a puny little being as we have been thinking, and we are fearful of this, we are running after this, running away from this. That I is the God we are speaking about. That is the Deva, the ultimate Deva. The Deva of all other Devas, the ultimate God of everything. That is the real I, which I am. And not only that, Devatma Shaktim. With that, the whole power of the creation of the universe is coming out of that. So whom he will fear anymore, whom he will be attracted anymore, whom he will run after and run away from. That is why I am saying it is the greatest discovery of the world. It fulfills a person. He will not look for anything else in the world. He remains for Sarvat Bhuta Hite Rataha. Only for the welfare of the people, whatever to be done, he goes on doing. It fulfills him emotionally, intelligentially, completely. So they discovered this Devatma Shaktim. How? Dhyana Yoga Anugata Apashyan. They discovered by taking to Dhyana Yoga that Devatma Shaktim, the revealer of everything, which is our own Atma, which is not little, the entire source of the power we are seeing in the universe, they are all appearing in that consciousness. The whole universe is appearing there. So the Shakti is that, from that. But why do we not see it? Naturally the question will be that if this is so and I have discovered it through Dhyana Yoga, but other times why am I not seeing it? Swagunair Nigudham. Swagunaihi Nigudham. It is covered, it is hidden by its own gunas, with which the Shakti, the energy is spreading the whole universal net of all these galaxies and everything. That those gunas themselves are covering this Deva, the Lord in us. That is why we are not able to get in touch with it. We are not able to understand it. See how beautiful, just one sentence. Devatma Shaktim Swagunair Nigudham. They discovered that truth about the ultimate revealer of the universe, who is my own Atma and who is the source of the entire energy. and who is covered by its own creation. It cannot be seen through, but because of the cover of the own creation. Yaha karanani nikhilani tani kalatma yuktani adhitishthatyekaha. What is that truth? Further, karanani nikhilani tani, whatever the causality in the whole universe, whatever the causes and effects, everything is going on. From the kala, from the time to the atma. That initially I said that atma is the seer of everything, the small atma. So from the space, time to coming up to that small atma, it is remaining, transcending all that, and also as the substratum at the holding all that. Adhitishtati ekaha. Ekaha, that is one, that is not multiple. But that one is holding the plural universe, this infinitely multiple universe, which consists of the space, time, up to our own, that small identity we are talking about, the consciousness in human being, the small, limited by our body-mind complex. The whole thing, it transcends it, and at the same time it supports it. Adhitishtati. Adhitishtati means both, supporting as well as transcending, it exists. Ekaha, that one. This is from Shvetashvatara. See how they report. I have earlier spoken from Kathopanishad also similar statements, that how going inside they discovered. These are all statements which we call experimental statements. That is, they discovered and they have talked about it. Whatever they could find, they have talked. The theory comes later. Brahma Sutra is an argumentative way of establishing this. In Prakarana Granthas like Panchadashi and all, we have various models to explain it. But Upanishads are plain experimental records. In the later chapter, the Shvetashvatara, the same Upanishad says, Na tasya karyam karanam cha vidyate न तत्समश्चाभ्यधिकश्च दृश्यते परास्यर्शक्तिर्विविधैव श्रूयते स्वाभाविकी ज्ञानबलक्रिया च न तस्य कार्यं करणं च विद्यते न तत्समश्चाभ्यधिकश्च दृश्यते परास्यर्शक्तिर्विविधैव श्रूयते स्वाभाविकी ज्ञानबलक्रिया च न तस्य कार्यं करणं च विद्यते न तत्समश्चाभ्यधिकश्च दृश्यते परास्यर्शक्तिर्विविधैव श्रूयते स्वाभाविकी ज्ञानबलक्रिया च न तस्य कार्यं करणं च विद्यते न तत्समश्चाभ्यधिकश्च दृश्यते परास्यर्शक्तिर्विविधैव श्रूयते स्वाभाविकी ज्ञानबलक्रिया च. He says that truth, for that, which is the truth? Truth is about our own I. That is the ultimate truth. For that truth, there is no karya, there is now no duty at all, nothing to be gained for him. He is already, everything is appearing in him. Natasya karyam, he has nothing, no duty to be performed, nothing to be gained from the work he does. Karanam cha vidyate. He does not have the instruments with which will be done. It's all the work of Prakriti. Then how is the work done? Natasya karyam karanam cha vidyate natat samaschabhyadikascha drishyate. There is nothing equal to him or transgressing him, transcending him also. This is the ultimate. Parasyar shaktir vividhaiva shruyate. Asya parashakti. But its supreme power that gets manifest as this multifarious world. And how does it get manifest as the world? It is not that he is creating some material and from there he is projecting the world. There is no parinama srishti, there is no material causation involved at all. Swabhaviki, it's absolutely natural. Jnana balakriya. Jnana balakriya, it is a movement in the knowledge itself. Jnana, it has got its bala, and that is resulting in the kriya. There is no desire, no motivation from the desire at all. The whole universe is running with this tremendous activity and energy. It is all his swabhavika jnana bala kriya. It is just a simple revelation of the truth. Esha devo vishvakarma mahatma sada jananam hridaye sannivishtaha hृदा मनीषा मनसा विक्लिप्तो एष देवो विश्वकर्मा महात्मा सदा जनानां हृदये सन्निविष्टः हृदा मनीषा मनसा विक्लिप्तो य एतद् विदु अमृतास्ते भवन्ति य एतद् विदु अमृतास्ते भवन्ति य एतद् विदुः amritaste bhavanti. He says, Esha devo vishvakarma. Devaha. See, again he is using. You can say God, but Devaha means which is the revealer of everything, the consciousness. Vishvakarma. He is the Vishwakarma creating the whole universe. Not, it is not a creation as we think. Our Vishwakarma takes earth and he will make the factory or the murti or anything. It is not like that. Esha Devo Vishwakarma Mahatma. He is the Mahatma. He is the Atma of everything. Whatever the whole universe, he is the Atma, not only of this body, but he is the cosmic I. Atma, Aham. Mahatma, Sada Jananam Hridaye Sannivishtaha. So if he is like that, to know him, to get in touch with him, do we have to cross over the world, go across the galaxy to find him? No. Sada Jananam Hridaye Sannivishtaha. He is always right there in our heart. Sada Jananam Hridaye. Not in one person. Everybody's heart, he is well seated. Sannivishtaha. Samyak Nivishtaha. Very well seated. Why? Because without I we cannot do anything. He is sitting in our heart as the I. Only we don't know his dimension. Sada jananam hridaye sannivishtaha. Hrida manisha manasa abhikliptaha. This abhikliptaha can be used in two opposite sense. Both will mean. Hrida means by the hridaya, by the emotional aspect of our being. Manisha has come from manit, means intelligence, by the intelligence aspect of our being. Hrida manisha manasa, by the mental aspect of our being. Hrida manisha manasa abhikliptaha. This abhikliptaha means maturation, perfection, purification. Also it can mean limitation also. So one interpretation will be he is seated in our heart, limited by our emotion, intelligence and mind. But the other better interpretation will be by the maturation of our emotional aspect of our being, mental aspect of our being and intelligential aspect of our being. That consists of the whole being. By the purification, process of purification, maturation, perfection of the being, when the being gets perfected, he becomes clear. Ya etad viduhu. By such a purificatory process, who comes to know? Ya etad viduhu. One who comes to know this Mahatma, Amritaste bhavanti, they become immortal. So he did not say that I have known, I have become immortal. Nowhere in our country you will find. Shinvantu vishve amritasya putraha aye dhamani divyani tasthuhu vedahametam purusham mahantam adityavarnam tamasah parastat tameva viditva atimrityumeti nanya pantha vidyate ayana. They are calling everybody, all of you, oh come, you are all children of immortality, only you have forgotten that you are immortal. I have seen that great luminance behind the ignorance, knowing whom anybody will become immortal. There is no other way. That is, without knowing him, nobody can become immortal. Because immortality is not with the body, not with the mind, but with our real identity. So this is our Upanishad. It speaks in this term. They have a pun also. The Shvetashvatara ends with a shloka where he says that day one can fold the whole sky like a skin. As we fold our asana, roll the asana, one can roll the whole sky as a skin when he becomes freed of all shoka without knowing the truth. You get the pun? If you can know the truth, if you can get over all the grief without knowing the truth, then you can fold the sky like a skin. That means it is impossible. It is impossible to get rid of the shoka, the grief, the suffering, grief particularly, without knowing God, without knowing truth. That is why I said the other day, Narada said that Tarati Shokam Atmabit. I have known everything. Narada knew all the Shastras, everything on earth. But he said, but mantravidevaham asmi, natu atmavid, tarati shokam atmavid. I have heard that an atmavid will cross over the grief. I still have grief. I am moving around with my veena, but I have my grief. So I have not known the Atma. Oh, Sanat Kumara, you please tell me about the Atma. So that last shloka or last but one of Shvetashvatara Upanishad says that day you will be able to roll the whole sky like a skin when you can know, when you can get over the shoka without knowing God or without knowing the truth. I will find out, it is there. Right? Not the last, it is the 20th verse. There are 3, 4 more. 23, up to 23 it's there. It is the 20th verse. Yada charmavat akasham veshtayishyanti manavaha. When people will fold the whole sky like a skin, charmavat akasham veshtayishyanti manavaha. Tada devam avidjnaya dukkhasyanto bhavishyati. Then without knowing, avijnaya means devam avijnaya, without knowing the deva, without knowing the consciousness revealer, the God, dukkhasya antaha bhavishyati. The end of grief will be there. You understand the pun. Now, as far as Kathopanishad is concerned, it is one of the fundamental Upanishads, very popular and very important. Each Upanishad has a certain background presentation also. It has a story behind, not always a story, but some, for example, Shvetashvatara does not have that kind of a story, but it starts with the students of Brahma Vidya, they are discussing and they are saying like this. So that way it will be. Like that Mundaka Upanishad which we took last year, that starts with that Shaunako havai mahashalo vidhivadupasanna angirasam vidhivadupasanna papracha kasminnu bhagavo vijñate sarvamidam vijñatam bhavati iti. Just one mantra. What is that? Shaunaka, who was a great householder, he approached according to the Vedic prescription as one should approach a guru. He approached Angiras and asked him, Kasminnu bhagavo vijñate sarvamidam vijñatam bhavati iti. By knowing what, O sir, by knowing what, everything will become known. Just one question, and the whole Upanishad runs after that. Now in this one mantra also he said, great householder. That means he has lived the household life properly according to the Vedic prescription, and that is how he has become freed of all worldly desire. He is coming to a rishi not asking for his son to get married or son getting a good job or anything of that sort. He is asking, by knowing what, everything will become known. So he was a fit receptacle. So immediately Angira started his instruction. And as I said the other day, that in the first beginning itself, that is the 6th mantra of Mundaka Upanishad, the truth is spoken of in its highest form. Yattadadreshyam agrahyam agotram avarnam achakshushrotram tadapani padam nityam vibhum sarvagatam susukshmam tadabhyayam yad bhutayonim paripashyanti dhiraha. This everything has been spoken of there. Then again they come down with easier illustration and all. In Kathopanishad, the story is a little longer, not like this, but there is a long story which is quite attractive for people also. And they have based it on the question which is very common to people. That is, what happens when the body falls? Some people say that he is still there, some is remaining. Some people say that he is not. So I would like to learn the truth of this by remaining under your tutelage. So one thing is very clear, that Nachiketa knew that answer is not just yes or no. That Yamaraja tells me and I will go, not like that. I have to learn the truth by remaining under your tutelage, so that we know what exactly it is. If at all anything remains, what remains? I have to know that also. If it does not remain, then what happens? Everything we have to know. So it is based primarily on this question, and then as it proceeds and Yamaraja was dilly-dallying, not replying him properly, then he put forward a very erudite question. He said that if you know anything, Anyatra dharmad, anyatra dharmad, anyatra asmat krita kritat, anyatra bhutatya bhavyatya yattat pashyasi tadvada. If you know anything which is beyond the moral codes of dharma and adharma, if you know anything which is beyond the cause and effect chain, if you know anything which is beyond time, beyond past, beyond future, if you know anything of that sort, you please tell me about it. I am not interested in anything else. Then only Yamaraja started speaking the proper tattva. Now the story goes like this, that his father was performing a yaga, and in that he was not doing it according to the Vedic prescription. Nachiketa felt that it is wrong, I must relieve my father, because instead of being taken to the heaven, he will be taken to the hell. I must protect my father. And he went and he asked him something which the father got annoyed with, and finally father that I will give you to Yamaraja. So that is how he felt that my father's word should be all right, should be proved true, so I will go to Yamaraja, and he went to Yamaraja, and then the conversation started. We will go through that as far as possible. I will start as I start. Now, all the Upanishadic discourses, they start with a Shanti mantra. Because as I said, this kind of a lofty communication can take place only in a very conducive situation, when there is a very good harmony in the atmosphere, particularly between the Guru and the Shishya, the teacher and the student, and in a very good harmonious state of body, mind, emotion, intelligence, only this communication can take place. To create that atmosphere, the Shanti mantras are always chanted before all Upanishadic discourses. They are not, although we are praying to the truth, to Brahman, but Actually, it does not matter. All the prayers are self-addressed. Even when we are going to a temple and praying to the God also, it hardly matters whether God exists or not, or the idol is never going to listen to our prayer. What happens is that it is our prayer, the power of our mind, and how much purity and integrity we have in our mind. Depending on that, our prayer gets sanctioned or not sanctioned. So many people are praying to the same deity. One or two get according to their prayer. The others do not get. It has nothing to do with the deity. It has to do with our own mind. So all prayers are self-addressed. If we are sincere, by the prayer we have to generate Shanti. That is the idea. Shanti mantra means we are asking from the heaven to Shanti to drop. Well, we can to some extent, but to the extent possible, we have to generate Shanti in our own being. That is the idea. So we will start with the Kathopanishad Shanti mantra. I would like all of you to chant also. I will chant slowly. Om Sahana Vavatu. Om Sahana Vavatu. Sahano Bhunaktu. Sahaviryam Karavavahai. Tejasvinavadhitamastu. Ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Very good. Now, if you can, you close your eyes, don't look at the book. Listening to my sound only, you chant. If you want, you can look into the book also. Om Sahana Vavatu. Sahano Bhunaktu. Sahaviryam Karavavahai. Tejasvinavadhitamastu. Ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Now, he is saying Saha Nau Avatu. Nau Avatu becomes Navavatu after Sandhi. It is Saha Nau Avatu. Avatu means be protect. May we too be protected. Now comes from two of us. Saha means together, both of us. Avatu means be protected, or O Brahman, the truth, you protect both of us. Either way. May we be protected. Now it is self-addressed prayer. So in our prayer, it is our mind which is inducing that thought, may we be protected. I will come to the explanation further. First, I will explain only the meaning. Saha now bhunaktu. May we too be well nourished. May we too be protected. May we too be well nourished. Saha viryam karavavahai. Whatever we do, may we do, we means two of us, we do, may we do with virya, with, you can say, courage, spirit, inspiration, with virya. Now, virya, to understand the word, we have to go to the Upanishad itself. In Kenopanishad, it says, Atmana vindate viryam vidyaya vindate amritam. Atmana vindate viryam. It is actually that shloka where it is Pratibodha viditam matam amritatvam hi vindate. Atmana vindate viryam vidyaya vindate amritam. Pratibodha viditam matam amritatvam hi vindate. When we know the truth in every perception, we cannot miss it because it is the revealer of the external world, revealer of the internal world of thoughts and emotions. We miss the revealer because our focus is on the revealed. When we identify the revealer, then we cannot miss the revealer any time at all. Even when nothing is revealed, vacuum it is, then also the revealer we know. The revealer is still there. So it says, Pratibodha viditam matam amritatvam hi vindate. When we understand this, we know this truth in every perception, then one becomes immortal. Atmana vindate viryam vidyaya vindate amritam. That in the Atma lies the virya, the real spirit, the real courage, the real inspiration. Whenever we do something getting anchored in our soul, getting connected to our inner voice, getting fully anchored in our soul, then we get the real courage in doing it. Whether we are successful or not, it does not matter. We do it in a spirited manner. So it is wrong to seek virya from outside in the manpower or in the ammunitions or any other wealth, monetary power. That is not the real virya. The real virya is within, when we get connected to our real soul, the Atma, real identity. So, sahaviryam karavavahi means we never should do anything with stealth or artificially or anything. Whatever we to do, let us do it with being anchored in the Atma. Then only we can do it with courage, with spirit. Sahaviryam karavavahai. Tejasvi now adhitamastu. That becomes navadhitamastu. Now adhitam becomes navadhitam. Tejasvi now adhitam astu. Now adhitam tejasvi bhavatu. Tejasvi astu. That is, whatever we are studying, let it become powerful, tejasvi. When will any knowledge become powerful? When we live the knowledge, it becomes powerful. Any knowledge, particularly self-knowledge, unless we, any virtue or anything, unless we live the knowledge, it will never have its power. The jnana from the book is only like the picture of a fire. Only when we live that, it becomes a real fire called jnanagni, which will completely burn off the ignorance, burn off all the worldliness, the dross of the world. It will not do unless we live the knowledge. We have mastered the Vedanta, we can lecture on Vedanta, but we are not living the Vedantic truth. In that case, it will not have its power at all. So, Tejasvi now adhitamastu means whatever we are studying, we must live that knowledge so that it becomes like fire in us. Ma vidvishavahai. Let there not be any intolerance between two of us. This is a very important statement. We will come to the detailed exposition later on. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Here, this 3 times Shanti, generally they interpret as the Adi Daivika Shanti, Adi Bhautika Shanti, and Adhyatmika Shanti. That means 3 tapa we have in our life. That is Adi Daivika Tapa, Adi Bhautika Tapa, and Adhyatmika Tapa. That means sufferings are of 3 kinds. When they are removed, they are the Shantis corresponding to that. Adi Daivika means from whatever we cannot do anything. It is all providential. Like suddenly flood coming in, or earthquake, or if some meteor falls on us, all of us will die. Nothing can be done about it. So if such disturbances, say in Chennai, if we have the Upanishadic class, can it be held in Chennai? It's all flooded. So it is now Adi Daivika Tapa is going on. There the discourse cannot take place, the communication cannot take place. So to have this kind of a communication, we need a peaceful setting when there is no disturbance from nature. That is very important. So we are praying for that there be no disturbance from nature. Next one is Adi Bhautika, means from the beings, from the elephants, from other animals, or from human beings. Human beings also. That is from terrorist attack. Suppose there is a terrorist attack, we will not be able to, we have to go back before 6 o'clock. There is no question of holding the class at 7 o'clock. All will get back home because of terrorist fear. That there on the road, you cannot move. Similarly, war. Suppose there is a war situation. These are all under Adi Bhautika. Now, I often say that nowadays it is difficult to isolate the Adi Daivika and Adi Bhautika because of our dams, the earthquake is caused sometimes. So, shall we call the earthquake as Adi Daivika or Adi Bhautika? Both are there. If you go on collecting water abnormally on a certain position, naturally the earth will have to get back its balance. Earth is not doing out of revenge, but to remain in its own trajectory, it has to adjust its weight, and that is what it is doing by earthquake. So our irregular accumulation of water, too much of water, I think Jawaharlal Nehru it was who declared after the Bhakranangal Bandhan, so that we have won over nature, never it can happen. And then the Koyana earthquake destroyed everything. Something, I don't remember which is the dam. Is it the Bhakranangal? Koyana earthquake? Or Koyana dam is there? Koyana dam is there, it is that. So Bhakranangal did not cause any earthquake. It is Koyana which was unusually big or so. So we cannot say whether it is Adi Bhautika or Adi Daivika, both will be there mixed. Then comes the Adhyatmika. This Adhyatmika again has got 3 subdivisions. That is, our Adhyatmika means for which no animals are responsible, no Daiva is responsible. It is only our own being. So it has got 3 aspects of it: body, mental, mind and intelligence, basically. Mind and emotion together and intelligence. So, bodily Shanti means, part of the Adhyatmika Shanti is bodily Shanti. That means when we are sitting for studies or this communication, the body has to be in a very stable state. Otherwise, we will not be able to concentrate. We will not be able to receive or communicate also. For the teacher, it is communication. For the student, it is reception. Both will not be possible if the body is not in a proper stable state. Suppose you have overeaten. Constantly the gas is coming out or so. Your mind will not be concentrated. If you are hungry, then also you will not be able to concentrate. Your mind will be on food. The body has to be in a very stable state. It should be in Sukhasana. Similarly, the mind, if it is too much given to greed, blaming, hatred, criticism, such a disturbed mind will not be able to receive the truth. Very selfish, greedy, such a mind will always host lot of desires and disturbances from all sides. They will not be able to receive the truth, absorb the truth. So, the mental state also has to be calm, which comes from desirelessness or unnecessary desire or greed, free of unnecessary greed, desire, hatred, etc. Basically, we call it raga dvesha, reasonably freed of raga dvesha. Then comes the intelligential state of the mind. If the intelligence is not humble, if it is too much egoistic, then it will always raise argument. Argumentation is not the way of knowledge. Inquiry is the way of knowledge. You can inquire. You can ask any number of questions, but not to argue and disprove whatever is given. In the argument, in disproval, you don't have the acceptance, so there is no question of the knowledge getting into you, because right in the beginning you have decided that I will not accept it, and you are refuting it. So in a non-humble state of the intelligence also, communication cannot take place. The more the humility, the more will be the receptivity. In a very calm, free of desire, free of ego mind, this communication can take place very easily. Just simply as Yamaraja tells Nachiketa at the end that, oh Nachiketa, Satya Dhrutir Batasi. You are really a Satya Dhruti, one who can retain the truth very well. May more and more disciples like you come to us. Yamaraja gives such a certificate to Nachiketa. It is because of that state of the mind that he found that. Also he said that, Nachiketa, you are Satya Dhriti. The Brahma Sadhana is wide open before you. You simply walk in. That means the knowledge is there. I have to simply tell you and you will absorb. I don't have to struggle for it. This is the real state of communication. So, here the question will be, why he is saying that may we too be protected? Is it not a very selfish prayer then? Only the teacher and the student, what about the rest of the people? All our prayers you will find generally it is for all. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramayaha, mayaha. Sarve bhadrani pashyantu. All are for all. Suddenly here in this Shanti mantra, why is it that they have used Dvivachanam only for the teacher and the student? This, when I started taking this Kathopanishad in the ashram, what was the year? Meenakshi was there at that time when we started. What was the year? 2002. After my surgery. So everything has that a good side of it. You may not know, I have steel plates and screws in my spine here. So it was, the throat was cut throat. So, and those steel plates and screws were put inside. It was a major surgery, after which the neck was immobilized. It is called some Philadelphian collar or something, immobilized for about 2-3 months. So that was the time I could not do anything except some walking and also. Then I think Ma suggested that you take some class. So our dining room in the ashram, those days we did not have the Annakshetra, the small dining room. There, after everybody has taken breakfast and all, it's over, we used to have the class. Only 2-3 people used to sit together. Guests also were very minimal. So the first day when we started with this Shanti mantra, the question came to my mind that why it is like this? It appears to be very selfish. And I was not getting the reply, because nowhere it is written. In all the books, everything I looked for, nowhere it is explained. Everywhere it is written, teacher and the student, teacher and the student. But how can the Upanishad suddenly become this kind of selfish that only the teacher and the student will be protected and all others may die? Does not matter. So one day while walking in our ashram road there in front, suddenly the revelation dawned that there is a deep meaning in it. What they are saying is the teacher and the student be protected, nourished well, and all whatever they have said. Unless that is there, Brahma Vidya would not exist in this society at all. Because it is not the bookish knowledge that I have written down whatever is the Vedas and it will remain. The real Brahma Vidya is a living knowledge. It has to move from the Guru to the Shishya, a living Guru to a living Shishya. It is like lighting a flame. With the picture of a fire, you cannot light a flame. You need a fire to light another lamp. So it is the Guru's fire which lights the Shishya's lamp. And it comes down through this Guru Parampara for thousands and thousands of years. We don't know how long, because it is prehistoric, at least 10,000 years. More than that, how much, we don't know. This knowledge has come down through this Guru Parampara by constantly this communication taking place in every generation between the Guru and the Shishya. So if the two are not protected, then Brahma Vidya would have been extinguished from the society. So it is seeing the importance of the Brahma Vidya in the society, that it is the sustainer of the society. Without that, the society will not be on the auspicious track. The purpose of Brahma Vidya is always to bring back the society on the auspicious track. So the prayer for the entire society, entire globe is very much there in praying that the Guru Shishya Parampara should flow without any hindrance, without any problem. Otherwise, Brahma Vidya, the living Vidya, will be lost from the earth. So, essentially it is for all, but it is with a specific importance that this Brahma Vidya has to be preserved for the welfare of the society. And that is why they have particularly prayed for that may both of us, the teacher and the student, be protected, be nourished well, etc. Oh, it was such a great revelation. The moment this came, I was overjoyed that this happens. Actually, we could have argued also, said that the shloka is not proper, it should have been for all and all. We could have said that. But we give enough of value to the mantras, that they are revealed mantras. There must be some truth behind. Sometimes so many thousands of years have passed, we may not be able to get to that actual meaning. It is difficult. But if we try, definitely one day the revelation will come. In USA, I had met one sannyasi there doing lot of experiments and all. He says that in Himalayas, they are a group of 6 to 8 sannyasis. And when they have some enquiry about some mantra they are not able to understand, all of them will go to their own cave and they will sit in meditation. Just now, as I said for Shvetashvatara Upanishad, Te dhyana yoga anugata apashyan. They will sit in their meditative mood to find out the truth in that. Their meditation is not just to sleep and doze and be a little peaceful. Their meditation is to find out the truth. And maybe sometimes 7 days, 8 days, 10 days, they will come back, one after another, sometimes all. And they will again discuss about the truth, what they have known from it. They will discuss amongst themselves that what did you find? And if all of them agree that this is what they found and they get the revelation that this must be true, there cannot be anything else, then they will accept. If they find that there is lot of difference and they are not able to accept, they will again go and meditate. He told me like this, I think they must be doing like this. So there are still people who do like that. We definitely do. That moment one word we are not able to understand, it will not leave us. Whatever we do, we take food, take bath, do other work, it will be constantly biting in our head. That what is the meaning, what can be the real meaning. Until it reveals its meaning, we will not be satisfied. So this meaning also, I had it like that. It took quite a few days of thought, it was going on, it was not leaving. When I tell, it becomes very easy for you. But to find out this, to get into this revelation, it was not at all easy. And there also the mental state has to be such that this revelation comes. Otherwise it would not come. So that is why they have used this Dvivachana, that may the teacher and the student be protected, be nourished. Now, protected is fine. May we be protected. Now, it is not just a bodily protection we are thinking of. Well, protection is necessary always, unless suppose in Ramayana, what happened in the 13th year, the rishis came and they said that Rama, you can make your kutia in, what is that place called? The Chitrakuta, no? No, that place. Huh? Panchavati, no? Panchavati. You know why? There was a conspiracy that Ravana's, I told during my Bhagavad Gita class, I think, that Ravana's people were trying to occupy that, colonization was going on. And they were trying to destroy all the rishis, their jaga, jajya, etc. because that is the intellectual property of the country. To rule a country, you have to first kill the intellectuals there. That is what they used to do, even now also. In Bangladesh it has been done. All the intellectuals, their children also were killed. So, they particularly, the rishis came to get rid of Ravana's atyachara, Ravana's torture, Ravana's people, Khara and Dushana. They asked Rama to put up his cottage there, because he knew that if Rama is there, there will be a tussle, that the personality is such that they will try to disturb him and there will be a fight, and in the process Rama will be protecting them. That is how it happened. So protection is always needed. Protection is needed from the king, protection is needed from the nature also, from everywhere. So may we too be protected so that the Brahma Vidya communication can take place without any hindrance. May we too be nourished, bhunaktu, may we too be nourished well. This nourishment, we should remember, it is not only bodily nourishment, mental nourishment, intelligential nourishment, all kinds of good thoughts, may they come. As we say, Ano Bhadra Kratavo Yantu Vishwataha. May all good thoughts come from all sides. That is the prayer. By praying that, it is a self-addressed prayer. By that we will be focused on the good thoughts, bringing in all the good thoughts, reading the noble things, speaking to noble people, so that good thoughts fill our mind. That is the nourishment we get. The mind, intelligence, emotion, all will be well nourished. So Sahanu Bhunaktu is not small. It's an all-fold nourishment of our being, not only the body. Body has to be with the proper food, but the mind has to be nourished with proper thoughts, noble thoughts, lofty thoughts. The intelligence has to be nourished with lofty analysis, understanding. The emotion has to be nourished with liberal emotions, lofty emotions. Saha Viriyam Karavavahi. This I have already said, that may we do all in connection with the soul, anchored in the soul, so that we can do everything we do with spirit. And Tejasvina Vadhitamastu, that whatever we read, may all that be powerful, Tejasvi. That will happen only when we live the knowledge. May we live our knowledge so that it becomes Tejasvi. Then comes Ma Vidvisha Vahai. May there be no intolerance or hatred amongst us. Why? It is very important in a Guru Shishya. That is why I am saying that this Shanti Mantra particularly, and all the 10 also, they are very important for the Guru Shishya Parampara. That is why this two has been, the two now has been used. Ma Vidvisha Vahai. Now people will ask, where is the question of hatred or intolerance between the Guru and the Shishya? Yes, everywhere it is there. It is a most important part of an ashram life or a life in the company of the Guru. Because it is not like the other knowledges that you teach physics and I learn physics and go away. It is a knowledge of our own real identity. And why are we not able to discover our real identity? It is because of some mental constrictions, intelligential constrictions, ignorance, impurities. That means imperfection of our being. With that only we come to the Guru to get perfected, and then the knowledge shines in us. So in this process, there particularly the Shishya will often get intolerant about the Guru. Suppose the Guru loves the Shishya and tries to give him more correction. Normally the Guru will not say anybody and everybody that you have this defect, you try to... Even if they ask also, he will not say. Until he feel the confidence that here is somebody to whom I can say that it will be taken in with a proper attitude. Then only he will explain. Now when a Shishya renounces his life and take refuge in the Guru's abode, naturally that itself gives a great confidence to the Guru. Here is somebody who has taken my refuge. It is my duty to take him across. We cannot refute it. You cannot deny. As in the 7th verse of 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna said that Shishyasteham Shadhimam Tvam Prapannam. There he said, Tvam Prapannam. I have taken refuge in you. I am your Shishya. Before that he never said like that. He was a friend. He says, I am your disciple. Shishyasteham, Shadhimam, you give your discipline. Why should you give your discipline? Because Tvam Prapannam, I have taken refuge in you. When the Shishya has taken refuge, the Guru cannot say that no, I will not give you. He has to somehow lead him. Now, with that confidence, a Shishya leaves everything and comes to a Guru. Now, the Guru has to do his duty, has to lead the Shishya to the ultimate goal. What will a Guru want? A knower Guru, what will he want from the disciple? Tell me. He will want the disciple to become like him? Is it not so? In Shankaracharya, or where it is said that there is no example, illustration of this Guru-Shishya relationship, because even if we think of a Parashamani, the touchstone, it only changes the iron into a gold, but it never changes the iron into a Parashamani. The touchstone changes the iron into a gold stone, but it does not change the iron into a touchstone, Parashamani. But in the Guru-Shishya relationship, Guru makes the Shishya like him, like the touchstone making the Shishya a touchstone. So there is no example in this world. Drishtanto naiva Tribhuvana Jathare Sadguror Sviya Shishye. But when he gives the correction, it so happens that after some time, or may not be in the beginning, because initially Guru will take time to tell him, but after that the Shishya cannot take any more correction, or the corrections that they form some asuya. In Bhagavad Gita I have explained that asuya means finding fault in the good things. So Guru is, out of his love he is giving the correction, but the Shishya thinks that the Guru does not like me, he likes the other disciples, and because he does not like me, he is always criticizing me. This is the asuya Bhagavad Gita has pointed out. Anasuya, so many times he has said, I have pointed out also. So this Ma Vidvishavahai is extremely important from the point of view of the Shishya. Now, where is the question of the Guru becoming intolerant of the Shishya? It can happen because of the Shishya's not conforming to the discipline and other things. The Guru should not feel. It can happen, the Guru feels intolerant about it. But the Guru should be the most tolerant, like the earth, like Prithvi, that anything done, he will never mind. He will take everything. Even if the Shishya wants to kill him and gives him poison, he will take it. If he is a close Shishya, knowing that he is giving poison, he will take it. He will be ready to take it. To that extent he will have. It should be. But there are scope for developing some intolerance. There are so many stories about it. Did I tell you that Divakara story then during the Bhagavad Gita? So in a Gurukula, there was a very Medhavi Shishya, a very talented Shishya called Divakara. It's not a story, it's a real. So the Guru used to always scold him, always criticize him, scold him. So much so the Divakara was getting very annoyed with the Guru. So he used to think that he doesn't like me. Why is he always doing like this? Always, whatever I do, he doesn't like. Then finally, one day he became so intolerant that he thought of killing the Guru. Although he was a very good disciple, but it went to that extent. So he devised a method that, those were the tiled roof cottages. So he brought a huge stone with rope, he put it on the tiled roof in a point that if he removes the tile and drops the stone, it will fall on Guru's head, just on the bed where Guru is lying. See, in the night he went up and was sitting there to see when the Guru sleeps, he will drop it. Now it so happened that day he could hear from there the Guru Patni, the Guru's wife, is asking the Guru that, I have a question. What is it? That this Divakara is such a good boy. Whatever I give, he does it so well. Everything he does so well. I don't have to tell even. Before that he does everything. He is like an Uttama Shishya. I have never seen anybody like this. And I find that you are always criticizing, always scolding him, angry with him. Is it right? Then the Guru says that you don't know. He is an extremely talented, powerful boy. He can do anything. If I don't keep him under check, he may get spoiled. And that is why I am afraid that he should not get spoiled. He should grow properly. Then only it will be all right. He will flower forth. If he is left free, then he can go either this way or that way. He can become a notorious person also. I love him most. That is why I do it. So Divakara heard what the Guru said. He came down, pulled back the stone, kept it back. The next morning after bath and all, he prostrated before the Guru and told him that, I have a question. What question do you have? You have to give me the answer. Well, you ask first of all, let me see what is the question. He said that if somebody thinks of killing the Guru, what is the atonement for that? Atonement means prayashchitta. उसका प्रायश्चित्त क्या होगा? कोई अगर गुरु को मारना चाहते हैं तो उसके लिए उनका प्रायश्चित्त क्या होना है? So the Guru said that, why are you asking this? That doesn't come at all. All of you are very good. Why are you asking that? No, I just want to know. He will not leave. But Guru also initially would not reply, but finally he said that, okay, you know what it is. He must commit suicide in Tushagni. It was a standard, what our Mandana Mishra's Guru, Ki Bhatta, Kumaril Bhatta also did that, because he had also deceived his Guru, Buddhist Guru. That I will tell later. Now this Divakara, he said that, yes, I will do it because I am the culprit. Then he narrated to the Guru whatever has happened, that yesterday I did it like this, but hearing what you are saying, I removed it. And then the Guru started saying, no, why should you? You are a great jewel, you will become a jewel, it will be a great ornament to our society, you should never do it. You are a small boy, you thought like that, nothing is there. I will give you some minor atonement for that also. You need not commit suicide at all, it will be a great loss for our society. He said, no. So finally, Guru also will not be too much going against it, because these are Shastras, it is written that, and he said, and he wants to follow the Shastras. So finally it was arranged. They will make a pit and it will fill with husk, and the person will be neck deep in the husk. Then they will light the husk from there, and it is a slow fire. So the death will take a long time. Slowly it will start burning from bottom. Then when it comes here, finally he dies. So it's a slow process of death, that is deceiving a Guru or trying to kill a Guru has been condemned so much that this kind of an atonement is given, which Kumaril Bhatta also undertook. It will show their mental power also. They used to take all these atonement. Now what happened is that when Divakara was burning in that, he started composing a poem, and his co-disciples, they started writing out what he was saying. But he could not finish it, because before the last line, his voice got choked because of the fire. He could not finish it. The story says that Kalidasa wanted to complete the poem, that writing the last line, adding that last line, he wanted to complete it. But at that time there was a Daivavani asking Kalidasa that, why are you trying to put a stone in a diamond necklace? That is, you should not attempt that. You will not be able to. Let it remain whatever he has written. For Kalidasa also. So that intolerance can go to that extent. In Kumaril Bhatta's case, it is not that kind of intolerance. That was the time when Buddhism was at its height, and Kumaril Bhatta was a ritualist, Karmakandi. So he wanted to defeat the Buddhists. For that, he has to learn about Buddhism from the topmost Buddhist teacher. With that idea, he took to the disciple of a Buddhist teacher. And after learning everything, he defeated all the Buddhists. Now there is a story also part of it, that one day he was sitting when the other Buddhists, they were criticizing the Vedas, but he was so fond of Vedas that eyes started trickling hearing the criticism. Then all of them found that he must be a hypocrite. He has somehow that why should he cry seeing the criticism of the Vedas? So he should be punished. So he told also like that, but with the knowledge he gained, he was a great Pandit. With the knowledge, he defeated all the Buddhists in argument. After finishing his job, his project was over, that he established the Vedas again. He took to this Tushagni Mrityu, that dying in the husk, burning husk. Why? Because he had deceived his guru, that Buddhist guru he had deceived. Although it was for a great purpose of establishing the Vedas, but that purpose was over now. So he took to the Tushagni. When Shankaracharya approached, he was already in fire. The fire was burning when Shankara came. Then Kumaril Bhatta said that you don't have to argue with me, I cannot argue now in this condition. You go to Mandana Mishra, he is my best disciple. If you defeat Mandana Mishra, it consider it as my defeat also. And that is how Shankara went to Mandana Mishra and defeated him, to establish Vedanta over the Karmakanda of Veda. They established Karmakanda over Buddhism, and Shankaracharya established Vedanta over Karmakanda. These are all very good stories because of we can understand their mind, how sincere and how powerful were they. These arguments were not like our arguments that we argue and go away. If you lose in the argument, you have to take to his life. Suppose Shankaracharya and Mandana Mishra, they are arguing. And who is the judge? Mandana Mishra's wife is the judge. So suppose Shankaracharya wins and Ubhay Bharati has to say that Shankara has won, that means she will become widow. Because the condition is that if Shankara wins, then Mandana Mishra will have to take up sannyasa. And if Mandana Mishra wins, then Shankara would have to come back, leave sannyasa and come back to the Karmakanda again. This was the condition. With such a condition they would argue, and if whoever wins, it will be like that. Finally nothing was happening, so Ubhay Bharati put mala on their neck and said that whose mala dries first, he will be defeated. So Mandana Mishra's mala got dried, withered. Shankara's mala did not wither. So Ubhay Bharati had to say that. Then Mandana Mishra became, what is his name? Sureshwaracharya. And there are different stories also that Ubhay Bharati also followed them. That is what the story says. Some story says that she died also very soon, her body fell, whatever it is.